We are having a Snapdragon revival here, and I think that sounds really, really romantic. And so I'm just gonna go with that. I don't care what color those snaps are, as long as they are snapping. Welcome back to So Arizona. Today I want to talk about this flower bed behind me. So this flower bed was beautiful earlier this spring and even late spring, but now that the temperatures are getting much hotter, everything is starting to kind of fizzle out and go to seed. So it is time for me to start thinking about refreshing this bed. And a lot of you gave me some great suggestions last winter when I was asking what you thought that I should plant in this bed. And I ended up taking a lot of those suggestions, and I am so glad that I did. I grew a few things that I had never grown before and some that were tried and true, and I actually mixed a bunch of old seed together and planted that just to see what came up, and it was really, really beautiful. But now it's time to start saving seeds so that I can have seed stock for next year. I find that every year my seed and my plants get much better because they acclimate to the space more and more. So as they grow in the space and then produce seed, and then I plant that seed the following year, I end up getting plants that are more and more resilient, which is very exciting. I want to go through and show you what seed is ready to harvest so that you know as you're looking in your garden what exactly you're looking at, what the seed heads look like, and when they're ready for harvest. You don't want to pick seeds too green, because if they're not mature and dry, or at least mostly so, then they may not keep very well. So let's go take a look. First of all, I just want to say that these Bachelor's buttons were so dreamy this year. Y'all, this was what made it look mostly like a cottage garden. Of course, there were other things in here too, but my goodness, everything was so beautiful. I want to show you the difference between a seed head that is not ready and one that is, so that you know exactly when you need to harvest your seed. So for this one, look how beautiful that is. Obviously that is still flowering and it's not ready. Eventually it will start to dry and it'll look more like this, but that's still not ready. What I like to do is wait until it is just like this. Let's get this up close so that we can see it. So everything looks dry and brown, and if I crumbled this between my fingers, it would all fall apart. That is what you want. If you crumble these up in your hand, this is what it looks like. It is really that simple. There are lots of seed heads ready to pick on these little purple or plum colored ones, as well as all of the other different varieties. You can see some of those dried heads there, as well as the blue ones too. Look how lovely those are, y'all. I am just in love with these Bachelor's buttons. They are so pretty, and the pollinators absolutely love them, and they are really, really pretty heat tolerant, pretty drought tolerant. I really like them because they're kind of long and slender, so they tuck in really well with a lot of other things. So if you're looking for something that will grow up and share the space well, Bachelor's buttons are it. Seeds are really forgiving, so as long as you've got something where you can either spread them out, or if they're completely dry, put them in something just to keep them safe, that's really all you need. If I know that my seeds need a little extra drying, I will use a plate or I will spread them out on a screen. But these Bachelor's buttons are pretty dry. So what I've been doing is just coming through and harvesting some of those really dried seed heads and putting them into a paper cup. These are like a natural brown paper, very biodegradable cup. And one of the restaurants that we really like in town will give you water in those. And because I'm cheap, I will save those and bring them home and they make the perfect little cup to just throw seeds into. Since the outside is just paper and not waxed, I will just take my permanent marker and just write the name right on the front. As long as the seeds are dry, they go really well in there. I haven't had a problem with them. Right now in my house, I have got nasturtiums, bachelor's buttons, calendula seed, and there's one other thing that I can't think of right now. I'll have to think of it towards the end, hopefully. Those sorts of things are usually pretty dry when they go off the plant. I'm going to show you around and show you some of those things too, but they work really well for just tossing into a paper cup. There are other seeds that take a little more time that you'll want to spread out, but bachelor's buttons are usually pretty good to go. Just look at these snapdragons. They are looking so pretty. What's interesting about these is that they are not the color that they started out with. What they started out with, I see one actually right here. Let me see if I can get it out of the shadow. I think these are called Bazaar Mix from Baker Creek, and they were all a lot like this. I'm going to put a photo up on the screen too, but they were kind of a stripy, bright color like that. But as it's coming out and kind of having a second bloom, they are not the same color. So that's kind of interesting. What's also interesting about those snapdragons is that they are having a second bloom. So they bloomed once and kind of acted like they were going to fizzle out, and now they are rebounding and having a second bloom, only the color is different. So that is really strange, but we are having a snapdragon revival here, and I think that sounds really, really romantic, and so I'm just going to go with that. I don't care what color those snaps are as long as they are snapping. We've got Nigella still blooming, but some of them are starting to go to seed. I'm going to show you those. I love Nigella because I think it looks like kind of like a little space alien or a space flower. Like if you went to another planet and you were looking around at the flora and fauna and you saw Nigella, you would not be surprised. It is just a really weird, whimsical little plant. I think it's beautiful. It looks like kind of a little fairy plant with its little green fronds and its lacy leaves. I just love it. I'm definitely going to be collecting seed from that Nigella. I mixed a bunch of different varieties. That was one of the seeds that I had mixed a lot of, that and the bachelor's button. So I had a lot of different colors, and so I got some really interesting mixes this time of colors, little pockets of different kinds. So I really was enjoying looking at those. They made for a very interesting looking border. They're a little bit shorter than the bachelor's button, so I tried to put them in front as best I could. So I'm definitely going to be saving seeds from those. I think the seed pod on the Nigella is probably the most interesting part of that plant. You know, that sun is so bright right now. It's starting to set right behind me, and it is blinding me. But hopefully you can see these little poppies. Let me see if I can focus in on these. So there are still quite a few that are blooming. I shared about these antique Flemish poppies a couple of different times, and if you missed it, they were a free seed packet that Baker Creek tucked into my order. They do that quite a bit. If you order a handful of seed packets, they will usually give you a free gift. And I think that's a really cool practice because I have tried quite a few varieties of all kinds of different things that I probably ordinarily would not have tried. And this Flemish poppy is one of them. So the bloom is beautiful. To me, it looks a lot like the peonies that my mom grew when I was growing up in the Midwest. And so they're really pretty while they're fresh, but they very quickly degrade into very brown, kind of yucky looking things, I have to say. The bees really like them. I've had such a great time watching them just swim through the petals because they have to go deep down into the petals to get to those anthers and that pollen. So that's really cute. I have to tell you though, these plants, the foliage on these plants is hideous. I think it is pretty darn ugly. They're kind of cool in the beginning. They're kind of this ruffly mint green color, but quite quickly they start to almost look like they have a nutritional deficiency. They get really pale towards the bottom, and as you work your way up the plant, they start to become yellow and dry and brown, and as these are setting their seed, they just keep getting worse and worse. And I want to save seeds from these, but it's going to be really hard for me to tolerate looking at these things until the seed heads are ripe. So I've got quite a few of these. Let's see if I can get that into focus. I've got quite a few of these seed pods, but they're still pretty green. So I'm gonna have to let a few of them stand. But like this one in particular, this one plant has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's got 5 seed pods, and those seed pods are pretty big. And I'm thinking that each one probably has quite a few. So I think I won't have to let very many plants stand, thank goodness, until these seed pods are ready to harvest. So just keep that in mind. Beautiful blooms, weird foliage. So if you're okay with that, then, you know, I think if you probably planted things all around it to sort of disguise the fact that they're kind of weird looking, then it would probably be fine. And that's probably what I'll do next year, because I am going to plant them next year. I and the bees both really liked them while they were fresh, and they are definitely going on the list for next year. All those little peas that volunteered here that looked so pretty have started to set seed. So I will probably be saving some of these seeds. These are a really yummy snow pea. I got the original seeds from Baker Creek. I will put the list of every variety and where I got it in the description box below. So that way it'll make it a little easier for me not to have to put the text on the screen all the time. But anyways, these came up volunteer and they did really well, and they're so beautiful. Pea blooms are really pretty, and I know this looks kind of like a disaster now. Everything's gotten really overgrown and it's starting to fall over, which is why I'm going to be cleaning it out. And so the peas as well, they've all fallen over too. So look at that. It is a Sleepy Hollow of a flower garden for sure. Here's an example of some of the peas. Just look how cute those are, y'all. Very pretty and very tasty, and I think they looked great in the flower bed. Here's some of the Nigella. Here's an example of the Nigella pods. This is a pretty small one. I think they're so bizarre looking. Just look at that. So strange, but really, really cool. I've got quite a few varieties in here. I'm not sure I'll be able to give you the variety of the Nigella because they were some old seeds that I mixed together. Honestly, I don't remember, but any Nigella you get will be gorgeous. When you look at your Snapdragon seeds as they start to reach maturity, I think they look a little bit like a skull, kind of. They have like 2 little holes and then 1 hole at the bottom, kind of like a skull. And I think that those do well to dry on a plate or on a screen for a little while because they tend to hold a bit of moisture. So just keep that in mind. I like to trim off just the little dried seed head of the desert chia because it's pretty sharp. So be careful with that. It will poke your fingers. And I'll dry that on a little plate for a while too. A lot of times you just have to crush it just a bit, and sometimes the seeds will just fall out on their own. They're very small and black. The Linaria that came out early in the spring is pretty much dried out, and the seeds for that are so small that I will just pull up the dried plant and just kind of sprinkle it around, and it usually pops up here and there in the garden the following spring when it's ready. So I really don't take the trouble of taking it out in the house and drying it or collecting it. I will let the Nigella seed heads just dry on the plant. They usually stay completely sealed in it. It's kind of like an air-filled little pod. It's very strange little plant, very cool. But I will let that dry completely on the plant, and then I will carefully cut it off, and then I don't even have to spread that out on a screen once it's completely dry. So that one is really easy. The Honeywort is such a beautiful plant. The pollinators really liked it so much, the bees in particular. And that one, as you look at the little curled head, you'll be able to feel when those seeds are starting to form. They'll turn black. They're not as big as a 4 o'clock seed, but they're about half as big. They are hard and they're black, and you can just take that off of that curled flower head. I like to dry those a little bit just because they're bigger, and I want to make sure that they're completely dry before I store them. Once I save all of the seeds that I want, I'm going to go and and clear out the ones that don't need to dry on the plant. Just remove those plants entirely. That way I can make way for some of the things that are actually coming up, which reminds me, I have got a few plants in here that were part of that whole mixed seed that I planted. I had a bunch of different old packets and I just dumped them into a bowl and just kind of tossed them. They needed to be used. They were well past their sell-by date by a few years, so I figured I would just let them take their chances. And there were quite a few that actually germinated, and they have been taking their sweet time with coming up. I am thinking maybe some of these may be perennials, like maybe black-eyed Susans or purple coneflowers or something like that. That's what they remind me of. I think there may be some coreopsis in here too. So that's pretty exciting, but I have to tell you that I'm not entirely sure what some of these plants are. They are a mystery. So if you recognize any of the foliage on these plants and you know for sure what they are, I would love it if you would share it with me in the comments below so that I know what to look forward to. So I'm going to try to work around those as I'm removing some of the old dried plants and leave those in place. I've got some things that are coming up that I planted by hand, some seedlings like some cosmos and some zinnias, and so those are coming up. And I wanted to remind you that if you are growing cosmos or zinnias this year and you want to get bushier plants that produce more flowers, make sure that you remember to pinch them off, and that is simply taking a sharp pair of pruners or scissors, and once they get to be about 6 inches tall or so, some of mine grew a little bit bigger than that, but I pinched them out anyway. You can just take some scissors and pinch them or cut them right at a leaf node, and then that will cause the plant to side branch and produce more flowers, and it will be more compact and more flower filled, which is really nice and really beautiful. So I've got a few cosmos that I need to do that with, as well as some zinnias, so I'm going to be working on that, and that is going to give me a flush of summer color. And I've also got some of the amaranth that I sowed in here. It is starting to come up, and if you are planting amaranth or thinking about it, because you still have time to plant amaranth, it is a really delicious green if you want to cook it just like you do spinach or any other green that you would cook. It's really delicious when it's young and tender. When it gets taller and bigger, it gets tough, and I think it's a little bit strong, but I really like the leaves cooked, so I will steal some from here and there around the plant, and it is really yummy, and they are really beautiful too, some of the varieties. The scarlet runner beans that I planted along the base of the teepees on either end of this bed are starting to wind their way up. Some of them need a little bit of help with finding the pole or the string, so I've been unwinding them from their flower neighbor and then winding them back up carefully onto the string or the pole. The birds think they're delicious, so they have been eating a few of the leaves, which is a bit annoying, especially since I've put out bird feeders now to try to make peace with the birds and distract them from some of my plants. So I have quite a few things covered now, quite a few cages on things, burlap over things, and that seems to be helping with the bird situation. But the beans, as they climb up the trellis, those are a little bit hard to cover up, so hopefully they will outgrow the birds and the birds will get distracted and go find something else to eat. So I think those beans are going to be really pretty, just little anchors on either end of the garden. Even if I don't get any beans, they're going to be pretty. Scarlet runner beans will produce these beautiful green tendrils. They climb really tall, and they have bright red, kind of scarlet, hence the name, blooms on them. And in previous years, I've had some trouble with them just dropping their blooms throughout the summer. Beans usually will drop their blooms when it gets hot, above 90 degrees or so, and I find that they will finally start kicking in and producing a pod in the fall, but before that they just really have a hard time. But I'm growing them mainly for their beauty, not for their production. So if I get a few pods, that's great, and if not, that's okay too, because I think they're really pretty. So my plan in this bed is to continue with nurturing the zinnias, the cosmos, the beans, some of my mystery flowers, flowers. Oh, and I've got some Dara, and the Dara is something that I've grown the last couple of years. It's in the carrot family. It looks a lot like a carrot bloom. The variety that I'm growing is kind of a pink and fuchsia color. It is just so beautiful, and that is starting to bloom now, so I'm really excited about that one. Those flat blooms, those umbel-shaped flowers, will really help accommodate the tiny pollinators, so a lot of the native bees and a lot of the predatory wasps that are so important for keeping the pests in check in our garden really love those plants. So I've got a few Dara plants on the other end of the bed, so those are going, and I mixed in a few peppers and a few cucumbers and things too, because I just could not resist. And I've also got some chard, because chard is a really beautiful plant too. And I think what I'm going to do is throw in a few more zinnias and some sunflowers. I keep planting sunflowers every 2 or 3 weeks because I just love the sunflowers. And I want to show you the sunflower that is on the other side of the garden. That has gotten huge. I actually got up on a ladder and measured it, and it is 9 feet 9 inches right now. It's a multi-branched sunflower, so there are small, about palm-sized sunflowers all the way up, and it is just covered in bees all day long. It is really beautiful, and this one was a volunteer. It was over where I was cleaning some seed last year off of some sunflower heads that I harvested, and I got quite a few volunteer sunflowers over there. So I guess I'm a little bit clumsy when it comes to seed harvesting, and I dropped a few, but I got a lot of bonus sunflowers this spring. So I am not complaining about that at all. They're really beautiful. So that is what I'm going to be doing in this bed. I think I'm going to primarily keep it flowers. We're just moving into summer flowers. And then, like I said, I've got a few peppers and a few cucumbers just along the front edge of the bed. And so I'm thinking that maybe I will put in some more okra. I planted some okra earlier in the year, but all of the birds ate the okra sprouts, or the rat, I'm not really sure which. So I'm going to plant some more okra seeds, and I'm going to cover it this time, because I just think okra is a really beautiful plant, beautiful flower and beautiful leaves, and actually the entire plant is edible. I don't know about the root, but the leaves, the seeds, and the pods are edible, and all of the flowers are just gorgeous too, and the pollinators love those. I'm so happy. I have no regrets about setting aside this bed for just flowers. Sometimes I feel like if my garden beds aren't producing anything, that it's kind of a waste of space, but that is just not true. It has been drawing in so many different pollinators and beneficial insects. It has been giving me so much joy to come out here and look and watch as the flowers develop. And I've gotten a lot of really amazing pictures from these beds, just from coming out with my camera in the morning and in the evening, and just standing here and observing what insects I can see. And it is an amazing amount of insects on all of these plants. It is so fun to watch. I am definitely going to continue this throughout the summer, and I think maybe having a flower bed in the middle of the garden is going to be one of my new things that I'm going to do every year, because it's been a real benefit to the plants, because there have been so many more pollinators in here. So having a pollinator strip like this one is a great idea. If you don't have a lot of space, you could do that in some pots, some flower pots, or just tuck them into a few of your raised beds or whatever space you have. It doesn't really take a lot of space to draw in a lot of pollinators. I do think that there are some flowers that give you more bang for your buck. So sunflowers are amazing. They are just so great for all kinds of different creatures in our gardens, all kinds of pollinators, big and small, not just bees, but wasps and butterflies and ants and just so many different things. I think bachelor's buttons are a really good one for sure, and any kind of an umbel flower is really good. So carrots, Dara, Queen Anne's lace, fennel or dill that you let go to flower, all of those that have big, flat, open-faced flowers, they're actually many different shallow flowers that allow for a lot of different pollinators to visit them. So definitely stick with some of those if you're short on space, because they are going to feed a ton of pollinators in your garden. I was going to include nasturtiums and some other flowers too, but those are in other parts of the garden, and I thought thought that I would just try to keep it simple for the sake of time and clarity, and I only talked about the flowers and the plants that I have in this bed behind me. So I will talk about nasturtiums, calendula, orlea, and a few other things another time. I hope that early summer is going really well for you all in your gardens. Please let me know what you're growing in your garden, or if you have any questions. As always, I include my email in the description box. Please feel free to write me and ask me anything you would like, or share pictures if you would like. I love to see what everyone is doing in their garden. I'm Kara from So Arizona. Until next time, happy gardening.